Kim from Emerging Creatively Tutorials, and this is part 3 of a free workshop on creativity and jewelry making. So if you've missed part 1 and part 2, I suggest you go back and watch those 2 videos. Part 1 was a creativity booster to kind of get your creative juices flowing, and we're going to be using what you found out in part 1 to help form our project for today. Part 2 was jewelry skills lessons. So I gave you very specific instructions on how to do a few of the things you're going to need to know how to do to make this project. So today we are making our project. So before we get started with the actual tutorial for how to make this project, I would love for you to go back to day 1 and refer back to any journaling or notes you took about your home, any connections that you made, any of your favorite colors, textures, themes. And then I would like you to pick out the materials for this bracelet we're going to be making based upon what you found. So we're going to be making a beaded bracelet. So you're going to be needing some beads, and I'm going to go into detail in a couple of seconds here, exactly what you're going to need, but I'm not going to tell you what beads to use. I want you to choose the beads kind of based on anything you found out. So for me, my house is very black and white, as I mentioned, with pop of color, so it seems like that might be a fun way to make a bracelet. Think about the colors, especially any shapes that are important to you, that sort of thing. Think about all that while you're choosing your beads. Also, maybe the mood of your house, that sort of thing. So then we're going to make a bracelet. So I'm going to head on over to my work table. I'll meet you there and we'll get started. I'm going to show you what you're going to need for this jewelry project. However, your materials are going to differ based upon the different items that you came up with, the different themes, the colors, the mood, all those things that you came up with in your creativity booster. So I'll show you, but your beads are definitely going to be different if nothing else. So as you see here, I have a beading tray, and this is something I sometimes use to help me plan out my designs for my jewelry. I don't always use it, and this is a very old beading tray, so if you wondered why it's all kind of beat up a little bit. But it's great because you can lay out your design, but then it also doesn't roll around. So, and it has these little grooves, and it has the measurements, so you can sort of come up with your design and have it there, so you don't have to keep thinking about it as you go on. It's already done. So I'm making a 2-strand bracelet, and as I mentioned from the first video, I found in my house everything was sort of black and white, and I have these beads, and sometimes you'll want to use some kind of unique material in your jewelry project. These are actually paper beads, and you can still sort of see the print on it, so there are words on these beads. And actually these beads I got from a necklace that I got at a flea market that I've taken apart. So you probably won't be able to find these exact beads. I don't actually make paper beads, so I'm not going to show you how to make them, but there are, if you are interested, there are plenty of tutorials for doing it. I have tried it a few times. You know, it can be fun, it can be messy. I'm sure people sell paper beads as well if you're looking for something like this. I'm also going to be using this big ceramic turquoise colored bead as a pop of color, which sort of plays homage to that piece of pottery I showed you. in my house, so I have a few pops of colors, and this is a color that does show up. And in fact, in my clothing, although it's mostly black, the colors I do have tend to be turquoise or blue in nature too. So this will kind of be in the middle as a pop of color, and it's also large. So that will be part of my bracelet. So you'll need beads. You'll need enough to go around your wrist, using the Creativity Booster as your inspiration for your bead color choices, shape choices, kind of the overall mood of everything. And then you're going to need a clasp, which I showed you in the jewelry techniques, jewelry skills techniques section. Or if you didn't want to make your own clasp, you can buy a store-bought clasp that's already made for you. And then if you're using this sort of clasp, you're going to need a couple of jump rings. I'm using 7mm jump rings. One will be to attach the clasp, and one will be kind of the other side of the clasp. And then you will also need beading wire. Sorry, mine kind of came apart here. And I explained about beading wire in the jewelry skills section, so you'll need that. And you will need crimp beads, so they're the little tube beads that hold everything together, which I also explained about in the jewelry skills section. I'm going to be using wire guards, and if you're going to be using this sort of clasp with jump rings, wire guards are going to be your best bet to use for your stringing. I know that I also showed you how to string without wire guards, and so this is optional. You don't necessarily need them, just like I mentioned in that video. And then also I have crimp bead covers, which again are also optional for this tutorial, but kind of make it look nice. You will need a crimp tool. You'll need wire cutters, and then if you're using jump rings, you'll need chain nose pliers and another pair of pliers. I'm using bent nose, but any two pair of pliers that are flat on the inside will work just fine, but just to open up the jump rings. And that is what you'll need. So let's get started. So to get started, since I'm making a 2-strand bracelet, I need to cut 2 pieces of wire. So I'm going to go through some of the parts of this project a little bit fast because I've already shown you in the jewelry skills section how to do this kind of nice and step by step. So if I'm going too fast for you, I'm going to show you everything basically again, but if I'm going too fast for you, I would suggest that you go ahead and go back to the part 2 of this workshop, which was the jewelry skills. So to start off, I'm just going to measure kind of loosely around my wrist, and then I'm going to have a few extra inches on each end of the wire, so I have plenty of wire to work with. And then I'm just going to go ahead and cut it, and then I'm going to cut a second piece the same length. And I'm just going to go ahead and put my wire away here. And then we're going to kind of start beading on one end of each, and I'm just going to kind of do them both at the same time so that I can keep everything even, because when we get in the middle, both of these wires are going to go through that turquoise piece. So we're going to start out with wire guards, and again, if you do not wish to use wire guards, I explained how to do this without them in the jewelry lesson section. But I'm using them because it works better to use these if you are going to be using a clasp like this and have jump rings. So you go up through one side, back down to the other side, and then pull it tight. Okay, so now we're going to take a crimp bead and pull that onto the other end of the wire. And then over the shorter end of the wire too, so both ends of the wire go through. And now you should be able to pull this tightly. And then that wire guard makes a loop. And that's actually what we're going to put the jump ring through later. So now I'm using my crimp tool to close this crimp bead. So I use the larger notch first, and then the smaller notch, and that's closed. And now I'm going to put a crimp bead cover over top of that. So I just put it in my crimp tool, and it kind of looks like a C or a clam, something like that. And then you place the crimp bead inside, and then push it closed, and it should look like a bead when it's closed. And now, since I mentioned before, I like to use 2 crimp beads on each end, so I will put a small bead next. There we go. Oops. And I'm going to pull that over both wires. And pull that up against my first crimp bead, and then I put another crimp bead on and repeat what I just did again. So sliding the crimp bead on, and then closing the crimp bead, and now I'm just going to add a cover, crimp bead cover to it. Alright, and then from there, I can just go ahead and bead half of this bracelet, and then I'm actually going to start the second strand doing exactly what I just did with this one. So I have my 2 cords started. So when we first start beading, you have the short end, you're going to want to put a bead or 2, slide that right over top of that. And then just let the end kind of poke out, and we'll trim that off when we're at the end of our bracelet. So in this case, since I'm going to be placing this bead in the middle, I am going to go ahead and bead half of this bracelet and then half of this. And before you start, I guess I should have mentioned this. I know my bracelet size, so I'm able to use my beading tray and use the measurements on it. But if you don't know your bracelet size, you want to measure around your wrist and then come up with how long your bracelet is. And then about half of that is how far you're going to bead before you put the middle kind of focal bead in. If in fact you're doing that, you may not even want to do that. Maybe you just want to make a double-stranded bracelet, or maybe you just want to make a single-stranded bracelet. It's fine, whatever you would like to do. So I'm actually going to go ahead and do half of each strand, and then I'll be back with you. If you're making this with me, you might want to just hit pause, and then we'll go halfway on each strand, and then we'll continue in a moment. Alright, so I have my bracelet halfway done here. So I have the 2 strands, and I have them each halfway. And so on this strand, I just wanted to show you the short end is contained completely inside this bead, so I won't have to trim off the extra wire at all. On this one, you can see there's a little bit of wire poking out. So I just like to trim that at the end. It's, I don't know why, it's easier for me. So now I'm going to add my big focal bead. So I'm just stringing both strands through. So that's what that looks like. And now I'm just going to continue my beading on each strand, just the way I was, and just, you know, finish it. So I'm just going to bead until the bracelet fits the way I would like it to fit. And I'm just going to keep adding beads. So I have 4 on this side, so I'll probably hopefully have 4 on the other side, and then I'll show you how to end it. So go ahead and finish out your beading on the other side of your bracelet. Okay, so now I have the other ends finished, or not finished, but beaded, and I have tested this around my wrist, and it is the right size, so I don't need to make any adjustments. So I just want to make sure I pull everything tight. That's the one thing you have to kind of watch when you're doing two strands, especially like this when there's a bead in the middle. But actually I'm going to finish these kind of one at a time, and then we'll put them together with the jump rings. So to finish, we are basically going to do what we did on the other side, but kind of in reverse, and you kind of have to do it a little bit differently just because you have beads on this end. So, oops, I'm going to take a crimp bead, and then a small bead. And then a second crimp bead. And then a wire guard. Alright, so I'm going to slide the wire guard on, so up through the one tube, around and back through the other. And then you just slide this shorter wire through your crimp bead, your bead, and your other crimp bead, and back through at least one more bead from your bracelet. And then we're going to go ahead and pull everything tight and crimp the beads like before, and then do that on the other end too. So as you can see, I have finished beading the other end, and I have completed the ends with the wire guards and the crimp beads. And then you can just make sure everything's secure, just kind of tug on it, and then you can trim off any extra wire you have on your ends, and just trim real close to the bead, but make sure you just clip the right wire and don't clip the wire that the beading's on, or else your bracelet will fall apart. So now all that's left is to add the clasp, and that's how we're going to pull the ends together. So in my case, I'm using the clasp that I showed you how to use. You might be using a different clasp, but either way, you can just use a jump ring on each end to attach it. And if you need help making opening and closing jump rings, then you can just refer back to part 2 of this workshop. So I just opened up the jump ring, and then I'm just going to place these wire guards right through and put them both right on that one jump ring. And then you just close the jump ring. Oops. And then on the other end, I'm going to add a jump ring. and then my clasp. So I'm just going to put it in this small loop here, right here, and then close the jump ring. And that is your bracelet. You might want to add on this end an extra jump ring to give you a little more room and make it a little more easy to close your bracelet. But that is the bracelet. So, like I mentioned at the beginning, I would encourage you to use your own creativity and any ideas or thoughts or colors, textures, shapes, moods that you came up with from your own house and the creativity booster from part 1, and put that into your bracelet. So perhaps the bracelet I just showed you how to make isn't quite exactly what your creativity sparked. That's fine. You can make a single bracelet, you can make a double bracelet without the focal bead, a different clasp. You could go through some of my tutorials on my website and find something that works better for your own creativity. So I hope that helps, and I hope you enjoyed this jewelry project. So I hope you have enjoyed this free workshop. And just as a reminder, this workshop is similar in setup to my e-course, Rediscover Your Creativity and Make Jewelry. That e-course begins on July 6th, and right now it is open for registration. And if you sign up in the next limited time, there is an early bird discount, so you can get a discount on it. So click on the link below and you can go and read all about it. It's a 6-week e-course. Each week you get a creativity booster, you get jewelry lessons, and you get several jewelry making projects. So each week you'll get a new boost of creativity, you'll learn more about how to make jewelry, and you're going to have completed jewelry projects. So then you'll get to wear your creativity everywhere you go. So I hope that this has been helpful for you, and I hope you'll go check out my e-course. Alright, I will talk to you soon.